The restaurant on the corner of Maple Street had always been a quiet place, especially late at night. It was one of those family-owned spots where locals came in for comfort food and friendly service. One of the most loved waitresses, there was a young woman named Hannah. With her bright red hair and warm smile, she made every customer feel special. She was always kind, quick with orders, and remembered the smallest details about people. Even the chef, Mr. Gomez, often said that Hannah brought sunshine into the kitchen every time she walked in. Hannah usually worked the evening shift and sometimes stayed until closing time. She was saving money for school and didn't mind the late hours. Her mom, Judy, worried sometimes, especially on slow nights when the restaurant was almost empty. But Hannah always told her not to worry. "It's just a job, Mom. I'll be home by midnight," she would say with a reassuring smile. One rainy Thursday night, Hannah left home for work as usual. She kissed her mom goodbye, grabbed her blue-striped apron, and walked out the door. Judy waited for her daughter to return like she always did. Midnight came, but there was no sign of Hannah. At 1 a.m., Judy started calling her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She called the restaurant, and the manager, Paula, answered. Paula sounded confused. She clocked out around 11:40 p.m. Paula said, "She said goodbye like always. I thought she left already." That was the last time anyone saw Hannah. The police got involved quickly. They searched the streets between the restaurant and Hannah's house. They looked through security camera footage, talked to everyone who had been in the restaurant that night, and even questioned a few delivery drivers and late-night regulars. But nothing helped. It was like Hannah had vanished into thin air. Her phone was never found. Her purse was still in her locker at work. The only thing missing was her apron and herself. Judy was heartbroken. She put up posters, went on local news, and never stopped looking. She believed her daughter was still out there, somewhere, and she refused to give up hope. 3 years passed, and life slowly moved on for others, but not for Judy. She still walked past the restaurant often, peeking in the window, hoping maybe someone would remember something. She still visited the police station once a month, even though they had nothing new to tell her. People began to whisper about how Judy should move on, but she couldn't. Her heart wouldn't let her. Then one afternoon, something strange happened. Judy was out with her sister, trying to enjoy a quiet lunch at a small café across town. They were seated near the window, and Judy ordered the soup of the day. It was a green broth with tiny meatballs, something simple and warm. She took a few spoonfuls without really thinking, but then her spoon caught something odd. At first, she thought it was a noodle stuck to the spoon, but as she lifted it, her heart dropped. It was hair, not just a strand, but a small, twisted clump of long red hair wrapped around the spoon. Her stomach turned. Her hand trembled. The color was too familiar. It looked exactly like Hannah's. Judy dropped the spoon back into the bowl and pushed it away. Her sister asked what was wrong, and Judy whispered, "This looks like Hannah's hair." The cafe staff apologized and said it must have been a mistake, but Judy couldn't shake the feeling. She asked to speak to the chef. When the chef came out, he was a tall man with sharp look in his eyes. He seemed calm, too calm. Judy stared at him, trying to find something, anything, that felt familiar. Something about him made her uneasy, though she couldn't explain why. She took out her phone and secretly snapped a photo of him. Later that evening, she posted it online with a short message. "Does anyone recognize this man? I need help. It's about my daughter." Within hours, she would receive a reply that would send chills down her spine. The reply came from a username Judy didn't recognize. It simply read, "He used to work night shifts at the Maple Street restaurant. I think his name is Vince." Judy's heart pounded as she read the message again and again. She couldn't believe it. How had she never seen this man before? She had spoken to everyone from the restaurant back then, including the cooks, the cleaners, and even a guy who restocked the soda machine. But no one had ever mentioned someone named Vince. She quickly sent a private message asking for more details. The user responded, saying he was a dishwasher who had worked briefly with Hannah during the summer she disappeared. Vince wasn't on the schedule. He was brought in by Mr. Gomez to help clean the kitchen at night. Only a few of us knew about him. He was weird, always quiet, always watching people. I quit after Hannah vanished because I didn't feel safe. Judy didn't waste a moment. She called the detective still handling her daughter's case, Detective Farrow. At first, he sounded tired, like he didn't want to go down another dead end. But when Judy explained what she found in her soup and told him about Vince, his tone changed. "I'll look into it," he promised. Judy didn't wait. She went to the cafe the next day, but the man wasn't there. A new cook was behind the counter. When Judy asked about the red-haired man from the day before, the cashier said, "Oh, that's Vince. He doesn't always show up. Says he likes to cook when it's quiet. Creeps me out, to be honest." Detective Farrow followed up later that week. He told Judy he had pulled employment records and found something strange. Vince had no official history in the cafe system, just like he had no record at the Maple Street restaurant. But his name did show up once, in a background check done by Mr. Gomez years ago. That check had flagged a warning. Something about time spent in a facility when Vince was a teenager, but no official charge. It had been sealed. Judy felt cold all over. Why would Mr. Gomez allow someone like that to work alone with young staff at night? Farrow began digging into Vince's past. He found out Vince used to live on the edge of town near an old warehouse. He no longer stayed there, but his name was still listed on some utility bills. Judy begged Farrow to go there, to search the place, anything. But they needed a reason. The hair in the soup wasn't enough on its own. Judy was furious. "You're telling me my daughter vanished. This man worked with her in secret, and now her hair shows up as food. But you can't search his place?" she cried. Farrow understood her pain, but the law was the law. Judy couldn't sleep. That night she walked the streets near Vince's old neighborhood, hoping to spot something, anything. Around 2 a.m., she saw movement in an alley behind an old bakery. A man was dragging something heavy into the back of a van. She ducked behind a dumpster and peeked out. It was him, Vince. Her hands shook as she took out her phone and took photos. She quickly sent them to Farrow, along with the location. Within minutes, he replied, "Stay hidden. We're coming." Police arrived quietly and surrounded the area. Vince was arrested without a fight. In the back of the van, they found strange tools, bottles of cleaning liquid, and a large cooler. But it wasn't what was in the van that shocked them. It was what they found later, in a small room behind the bakery. Hidden under old shelves was a locked door. Behind that door was a basement, and in that basement was a freezer. Inside the freezer was Hannah's missing apron, stained and dirty, and something wrapped in plastic. Something that made everyone in the room go silent. Judy was called to the scene. Farrow didn't want her to see, but she insisted. When she looked inside the bag, she gasped. It was another clump of red hair, exactly like the one she had found in the soup. Tears ran down her face. "That's my baby," she whispered. But what haunted her most was what they didn't find, Hannah's body. It still wasn't there. And that meant Judy's nightmare wasn't over yet. After Vince was taken into custody, Judy was left with more questions and answers. The police interviewed him for hours, but he barely spoke. When asked about Hannah, he just stared at the table in silence, his eyes empty and distant. Detective Farrow told Judy that Vince wasn't talking, not even to ask for a lawyer. It was as if he didn't care about what happened next. The evidence they had, the hair, the apron, the cooler in the van, was enough to charge him with kidnapping and possible murder. But without a body, everything felt like a puzzle with too many missing pieces. Judy sat in her car outside the police station, holding Hannah's photo in her hand. "I'm so close to you now," she whispered, "but I still don't know where you are." News spread fast. Reporters crowded the street outside the cafe where Vince had worked. People who had eaten there were horrified, especially after hearing about the hair in the soup. One customer even came forward saying she thought she had found something odd in her stew weeks earlier, but didn't report it because she was embarrassed. Now it seemed clear Vince had been doing something terrible with the food. The health department shut the cafe down, and investigators searched every inch of the building. In a small storage room in the back, they found a box of photographs, most of them blurry, taken at night. One of the photos was of Hannah, standing near the restaurant back door, smiling at someone outside the frame. Another was a close-up of her hair. They were dated the night she vanished. Detective Farrow and his team began connecting the dots. Vince had an obsession, not just with Hannah, but with red hair. They found hair samples in labeled jars hidden in his apartment. Each one had a name written in shaky handwriting. Most of the names didn't match any missing persons cases, but one label stood out. It said Hannah, September 14th, the exact night she disappeared. Judy felt sick. What had this man done? Why would he keep parts of her daughter like trophies? It was all too much. But then came a surprise no one expected. A young man came forward. He worked at a warehouse several miles out of town and said he had seen Vince there recently, unloading boxes into a side room. The man hadn't thought much of it until he saw Vince's face on the news. The warehouse was mostly abandoned now, used only for storage, and no one checked it often. Detective Farrow acted quickly. They got a warrant and searched the place the same day. The building was dusty and quiet, filled with old chairs, broken equipment, and unused furniture. But in the far back, behind a false wall, they found another room. It was dark with no windows. On the floor was a mattress, a small table, and a chain bolted to the wall. And in the corner was a plastic bin filled with clothes, including Hannah's blue-striped apron. Forensic teams were called in. They tested everything: walls, floors, the bedding, the clothes. DNA confirmed that Hannah had been there, but still there was no body. Judy's heart ached with hope and fear. If she was there, she said, maybe she got out. Maybe she's still alive. The thought was almost too much to believe, but it was possible. The discovery changed the case. Police now believed that Hannah had been held captive, possibly for weeks or months, before something happened. But what? Had she escaped? Had Vince moved her? The investigation took a new turn. Farrow pushed Vince harder during questioning, showing him the photos, the chain, the clothes. For a moment, Vince twitched. A flicker of emotion crossed his face. Then he leaned forward and said just one thing. She was special. That was all. After that, he refused to speak again. Judy stared at his picture on the news that night, full of anger. You don't get to say that, she whispered through her tears. You don't get to say she was special and then take her from me. As more evidence came in, another lead surfaced, one that would change everything. A woman named Gloria came forward. She worked as a nurse at a mental health facility years ago and recognized Vince from the news. She said she remembered him as a troubled boy who had a fixation with young women, who reminded him of someone he lost. He used to talk about a girl named Hannah, she said. But this was years ago. I thought he was just making her up. But now it seemed Vince had found someone real who matched his obsession. And that obsession had turned into something dangerous. Judy couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her daughter's face, smiling, then scared, then gone. The idea that Hannah had been kept somewhere, possibly alone and afraid for months, haunted her. But a new emotion had begun to rise inside her too. Hope. If Vince had been careful to keep things hidden, and if he hadn't disposed of her body, maybe, just maybe, Hannah had escaped. Detective Farrow thought the same. The bin of clothes, the hidden room, the lack of blood or signs of struggle, they all suggested Hannah hadn't died in that place. But if she got out, why hadn't she come home? Police released Hannah's photo again and asked the public for any information about a red-haired girl seen in the last few years, possibly confused, homeless, or living under a different name. Dozens of calls came in, but most were false leads. Judy followed each one anyway. She drove to nearby towns, showed Hannah's picture to gas station clerks, diners, shelters, anyone who would listen. She begged strangers to look closer. She might not remember who she is, she said, but she's out there. I can feel it. One day, almost 3 months after Vince's arrest, Judy received a phone call. A woman who worked at a church-run shelter 2 towns over said she thought a girl who matched Hannah's description had come in a few times in the past year. She doesn't talk much, the woman said, keeps to herself, but she has bright red hair and always wears long sleeves, even in the heat. We never pressed her. Judy's heart raced. The shelter sent over a blurry image from their security camera. It was a side view, the girl's face partly turned, but Judy knew. It was Hannah. Detective Farrow and Judy rushed to the shelter. But when they got there, The girl was gone. She had left the night before. A volunteer said she mentioned needing to head to a place near the train station to find someone she called the other red one. That phrase sent chills down Judy's spine. Was Hannah looking for someone? Or was that just something she said to stay safe? Judy and Farrow checked nearby stations, asked questions, and handed out flyers. They even searched parks, alleyways, and closed-up buildings. Then, on the third day, Judy saw her. She was sitting near a fountain behind an old bus terminal, arms wrapped around herself, rocking slightly. Her hair was long and tangled, but unmistakably red. Judy stepped forward slowly. "Hannah," she said softly. The girl flinched, didn't look up. Judy's voice cracked. "Baby, it's me. It's Mom." The girl turned her head just a little, eyes wide, face thin and pale. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a wall breaking, the girl stood up and ran into Judy's arms. They both fell to the ground, crying. Judy held her tightly and whispered again and again, "I found you. I found you." Hannah was taken to the hospital. She was weak, underweight, and showed signs of trauma, but she was alive. She didn't speak for the first few days, only nodding or shaking her head when asked simple questions. The doctor said she might have memory gaps, or maybe she had just learned to stay silent to survive. Judy stayed by her side every minute, holding her hand, playing her favorite music, reading her old stories. Eventually, Hannah spoke. "He said you weren't looking anymore," she whispered one night. "He said you forgot me." Judy's heart broke again. "Never," she said. "I never stopped." Through therapy and time, bits and pieces of Hannah's story came out. Vince had taken her from behind the restaurant during her night shift. He told her mom had left town, that no one was looking. He kept her hidden, moved her from place to place. Sometimes he was kind, other times cruel. When he left her alone in the warehouse one day, she managed to break a window and escape. But she didn't know where to go. She had no money, no ID, no trust in anyone. So she wandered, hiding, surviving, afraid to ask for help. Judy promised her it was all over now. Vince would never hurt her again. In court, the evidence was overwhelming. Vince was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. But even that didn't erase the scars. What stayed with Judy most was that it all started with a bowl of soup. One strange spoonful had held the truth she had waited 3 years to uncover. A clump of red hair, so small, so strange, had led her down a path of darkness, fear, and pain. But in the end, it also led her back to her daughter. They moved to a new home, far from the city. Hannah planted flowers in the backyard, wore loose dresses, and read books in the sunlight. She didn't talk much about those 3 lost years, and Judy didn't push. Some things were better left in the past. What mattered most now was the present. Hannah was home. She was healing. And Judy, every time she saw the red hair that had once brought her so much sorrow, now saw hope, survival, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child.